Hey everyone. Clearly there is no sound yet, uh, but I'm here. You don't ever get a schedule when a verdict is coming down, so excuse the wet hair. But I'm here. We're here. Fingers crossed. John's here too. John's watching from home. Hey Lynn, thanks everyone for incredible moderators for helping run this too. I'm going to put myself back on mute. So there is no sound. Hey Susan, good to see you. Hey Megan. Again, no sound right now. It's on purpose. Oh, good to see we have a lot of people here. I am nervous. Keep talking. Okay. I hear you. Let's see what's going on too. I'm getting some text, so stick with me. I'm multitasking. Um, okay. Clearly this did not go the way we thought. I'm gonna say now, a jury will never surprise me after this. We all certainly thought that this was going to be very fast. John and I both said as much on both of our live streams about this case, that we're very passionate about this case, that we said, oh, this is going to be fast. We couldn't have been more wrong. We're certainly nervous. We thought the evidence was compelling. I've shared in YouTube Shorts and other places one thing that I think really maybe got the jury on closing statements, and that was the defense pulling. Well done, defense. This idea that it wasn't him in the car, in a red car that was in the evidence and in the discovery, and they showed that the guy had hair. And honestly, if you zoom in on it, because that's what the jury requested, how do you zoom in on a video or a photo? They didn't say which one they wanted to zoom into, but if I'm speculating here about that one in particular, you zoom in, it really doesn't look like him. Hair or not, wig or not, it does not look like him. And but I actually honestly don't think the car is his. It looks red. It doesn't look like his Denali. I think that what was going on is after he left the crime scene, in order to find where his car went, they're checking all surveillance camera from across the area, from Jeff Garriman's house back to his, and they snapped all maroon and red SUVs. And I just don't think that's his car. So it was really a throw. And I think then the most concerning thing is that the prosecution really didn't address it. And it was very, very confusing. In addition, despite all the compelling evidence, you have to wonder if some of the jurors have some biases. You don't know, and it's okay. We all have biases. I'm not even judging any of the jurors. We all have biases. We do jury questionnaires to make sure that everything's fair, and you have a good group of varied jurors, diverse jurors. They certainly are. There's 7 women, by the way, and 7 men. They are diverse, and so this is where my brain goes, just me speculating what was going on behind the scenes. Are some of the jurors concerned about being framed? Has a juror been framed before? There is a lot of talk in our world right now, especially in the United States, about the possibility of a politician being framed, or or the news Jeff Garriman being untrustworthy. Jeff Garriman is not untrustworthy. He was a solid truth teller, and he was an incredible journalist that has inspired both Dr. John and myself. But then you have to wonder, did they humanize him enough? These are just the things going through my mind. Did the prosecution humanize Jeff Garriman enough? Because it always helps the jurors to feel connected to the victim. And are there people there that are concerned about the fake news or concerned about journalists? Not all journalists have a great reputation right now in the United States. These are things that I'm questioning. I wonder if, like I said, somebody has been framed before. I wonder if someone is wary of a realty company. Maybe there's a juror that's been framed by a realty company and they're like, oh yeah, I believe him. Also, let's point out what they don't know about Tellis. They don't know that he has been arrested for domestic violence, that his wife called police, and that he's on body cam footage, and that when you delve into that, she was afraid of being strangled. We have not. They did question and ask for Jeff Garriman's articles about Robert Tellis. I thought that was interesting, and that was a good thing that the jury was able to ask. So those are just a few of the things going through my mind. He hasn't had family that we know of in the courtroom supporting him. That's interesting. I don't know if the jury knows that, though. It's certainly interesting. Things I worry about, if it's a hung jury or if he's found not guilty. Not only is it heartbreaking for Jeff Garriman, the victim, to not receive justice in what many of us believe that this, that if Robert Tellis is indeed guilty of this, then Jeff Garriman doesn't receive justice. But I think the thing that makes me also, in addition, I think, by the way, pause really quickly, I think these are many of Jeff Garriman's coworkers from the Review Journal, the Las Vegas Review Journal, sitting there, just so you know. I'm so glad that they're there, taking time off of work to be there for their late coworker. But I also worry about the chilling effect on this, that the idea that a journalist, a truth seeker, a fact teller could be murdered and by a politician or leader in the community, and that they could get away with it is a frightening idea to me, and sets, I think, a really chilling precedent. So those are just a few things on my mind. By the way, Law and Crime, the reason why we're streaming from Law and Crime is Pool. They are the ones in the courtroom right now. In fact, my friend Ben is one of the photographers. Okay, they're setting up. Is there sound? Where's the sound? Troublemaker Baker, is there sound? Does anybody know?
Come to order and be seated, please.
The record reflects that the hearing is taking place outside the presence of the jury panel. The court has marked as Courts Exhibit 27 and 28 notes received from the jury panel. Does the state want to say anything?
No, Your Honor.
The defense?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, at this time we can bring the jury panel in. You can bring the jury panel.
Yes, ma'am.
This. My heart is beating right now. Oh my gosh. Justice for Jeff. Yes, exactly. Never forget his mugshot. You know, that's something else that this jury hasn't seen is his mugshot, right? Think about that. Like, I feel like that mugshot was like his mask off. They've only seen this sort of innocent, covert type, meek seeming man. Like his mask is, I mean, it's fit, but not completely. There was this. Oh my gosh. Justice for that. Exactly. Thanks, Troublemaker, for helping stream it now. Everyone should have video. Everyone should have sound.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated.
Does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel as well as the two alternates? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Jaskowitz?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Juror number 2, have you been selected to be the foreperson?
Yes.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
Will you please hand the verdict form to Officer Hawks?
Justice for Jeff. Thank you, everyone. Everyone put justice.
The clerk will now read the verdict form out loud. The defendant and his attorneys will stand for the reading of the verdict.
District Court, Clark County, Nevada, State of Nevada, Plaintiff versus Robert Tellis, Defendant, case number C-368935, Department number 12, verdict. We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Robert Tellis, as follows. Murder with use of a deadly weapon, victim 60 years of age or older. Guilty of first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon, victim 60 years of age or older. Special verdict. The jury unanimously finds the murder willful, deliberate, and premeditated. The jury unanimously finds the murder was committed by means of lying in wait. The jury unanimously finds the murder was committed by means of elder abuse. Guilty of first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon, special verdict. The jury unanimously finds the murder willful, deliberate, premeditated. Do you want me to finish this?
I'm just having the attorney's approach for just a moment.
Thank you, Judge.
Because
Oh my gosh. Justice for Jeff. Guilty. Guilty. That made me emotional. Justice for Jeff, which is justice for truth. Justice for, right, to Katie who posted, you know, it's journalists are for truth, for democracy, for... Why did they just, oh, we're on sidebar already? Middle of the verdict, we're doing a sidebar? Oh my gosh. What's he doing?
okay.
Dated this 28th day of August 2024, signed by foreperson, juror number 2. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are these your verdicts as read? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
Okay, this time, ladies and gentlemen, the clerk is going to ask you a question and just ask that you respond yes or no.
Juror number 1 is, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 2, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 3, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 4, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 5, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 6, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 7, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 8, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 10, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 11, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
Juror number 12, are these your verdicts as read?
Yes.
At this time, the clerk will record the verdict in the official record of the court. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, pursuant to your verdict, we will now go into the penalty phase of the trial. We're going to take a break and allow the attorneys to get prepared for that penalty phase. So we will start again at 1:30. At this time, you'll all be able to be back together again. You're going to go with the court officer back to the jury deliberation room. And at 1:30, we will begin the penalty phase of this trial. Thank you very much, and you're excused.
Thank you, all right. You're acting jury, please. Jury, please don't be okay.
Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. John is watching too. Guilty. Gratitude. If anybody knows of any juror that was, on this trial, or knows of somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, please have them reach out to us. We would love to talk to any jurors who were part of this trial to understand what happened. Guilty. Guilty. I agree. Glenna. Justice has been served. Yeah, he did look. He was taking it in. He didn't bawl. He looked. I'm reading all your comments. And who is that? Oh, God bless her. Rita Reed. That's Rita. That's Rita. Thank you, Magnolia. Okay. That was Rita. She feels, she won the election and she loved Jeff Garman. And on the 48 Hours episode, which is a really good one, she said she sometimes felt, that she was partially to blame. She's a good woman. But Jeff Garman fought for Rita. He fought for her and listened to her. That was Rita. Goosebumps. Exactly. Bless her. Thank you, Troublemaker. I'm going to sign off. Wow. Thank you for being here. Hidden Gems, please like and subscribe. Thank you. I'm glad we could watch this together. Not what we thought. Okay, guys, a jury is never going to surprise me again how long they take, but I will have trust in the process.
jury, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated.
Does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel? Yes, Your Honor. And the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. The state may address the jury in your opening statement.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We're now moving into the penalty phase of the proceedings. This will be, you'll probably be relieved to learn, much shorter than the trial phase. And what you'll be asked to do as jurors at this point is decide what the appropriate punishment should be for Mr. Tellis. In Nevada, there are 3 possible punishments for first-degree murder. So as a group and individually, you'll be selecting amongst 3 possible penalties. The least severe penalty for first-degree murder in Nevada is a sentence of 50 years in the Nevada Department of Corrections with parole eligibility after 20 years has been served. That's the least severe sentence. The next sentence is a life sentence in the Nevada Department of Corrections, again with parole eligibility after 20 years has been served. And the most severe sentence possible in this case is a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And that sentence means just like it sounds. That would mean Mr. Tellis would spend the rest of his days in the Nevada Department of Corrections. At this point in the proceedings, you will hear from the family of Mr. Gehrman, and you'll hear information from them about how the crime has impacted them. You'll probably hear information from the defense. Judge Levitt will give you additional instructions that kind of guide you through the penalty part of the trial. And you can also rely on everything you heard in the first part of the trial, the past 2 weeks, and all of those exhibits. And what you're asked to do as jurors at this point is kind of put everything you know together in conjunction with the additional information you hear this afternoon, and you pick amongst those 3 possible sentences. And we would just ask you to consider everything, and then once you all individually and collectively make a decision, you come back and it's announced in court. We thank you for your attention.
Mr. Kasich?
Yes, thank you. My remarks really, they parallel that of Ms. Weckerly. You have 3 choices. There are 3 options. As we've said previously on multiple occasions, you've been a very attentive jury. Please keep an open mind. Listen to the witnesses. You'll be hearing from 2 families, Mr. Gehrman's family and Mr. Tellis' family. At the close of the evidence, I will be addressing you. I will be asking you to consider what the goals, the purposes of sentencing is, and I'll be asking you to consider a fixed term of 50 years with a minimum parole eligibility of 20. Thank you.
Any comment, first witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Jay Gehrman.
Please step up to the witness stand. Your name and pen, raise your right hand, face the clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Sure. Jay Gehrman, Jay German.
May I proceed? Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us where yourself and your brother Jeff grew up?
Sure. Our family is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jeff was born in 1953. I was born in 1959. So we're 6 years apart.
Okay, so he's the older brother?
He is, yeah.
And out of how many siblings?
4.
And so who are the other two?
My two sisters, Julie and Jill.
And they're present in the courtroom as well?
They are, yes.
What kind of things did Jeff like to do when he was a kid?
Well, Jeff was into sports. In fact, he taught me most everything I know about sports. He was a good athlete. He excelled in basketball, football, golf, tennis. He was just a natural athlete. And he was a good student.
Where did he end up going to, like college, and where did he study?
Jeff studied at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where he got his bachelor's degree, and then he got his master's degree in journalism, I believe, at Marquette University.
Okay. And when was it that he came to Las Vegas?
1978.
So quite a while ago.
Yep.
Do you know where he worked prior to working at the Review-Journal? Did he work at the Sun?
Oh, he did. Yeah, when he moved out here, he started working at the Las Vegas Sun.
Okay. So he was a reporter for a number of years here?
Yes, since he moved out here. Yeah, he took the job and drove his car across country.
Do you remember him ever talking about particular stories or events that were important to him as a reporter?
Well, I'd have to think about that, but I mean, Jeff took seriously every story that he worked on. He really did. I mean, he investigated. He really enjoyed being an investigative reporter, and I mean, there were a lot of stories he worked on. I know the Binion murder trial was a big one in his life, but there are so many.
And what kind of things did you two do as brothers?
Well, first of all, he taught me how to play golf, and he was a good teacher. He really was, and he was a natural. I wasn't, but I think I only beat him one time in my ever. But he so we liked to play sports. We would play football and basketball right around behind the house there was a big field where we played football, so I learned how to play. So we did a lot of sports. He took me to my first Milwaukee Brewers game, I think when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. Movies, we went to a lot of movies. I remember that when we were younger. And even when we got a little older, he liked going to movies.
Were you living here in Las Vegas in September of 22?
I was, yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury how you learned about his death?
Yeah, it was a tough night. My sister Julie called me, woke me up. I don't know, it might have been 11 o'clock or so at night, and broke the news to me. It was devastating. And I mean, I certainly didn't sleep at all that night, the rest of the night, but yeah, it was a tough one.
And how do you feel that, like observing your two sisters, how would you say that this event has impacted your sisters and your observations of them?
It's been really hard. I mean, it's been a hard couple of years. I mean, Jeff was our leader. He was the older brother that we all leaned on. And yeah, it was hard for them.
And how about for yourself?
Difficult.
And are there particular events that you've kind of wished he'd been there at, or?
Yeah, I mean, I just retired, and Jeff had no interest in retiring. 2 years ago, he was 69 years old, and he loved what he was doing, and we talked about it. He just wanted to keep writing and investigating, but my goal when moving out here a few years ago was to spend time with the family, and Jeff especially, because we had gotten closer as we got older, and I was hoping that we could spend time playing some golf when we retired, going to movies, going to Raider games and Golden Knights games. I miss all that with him.
Yeah. Your Honor, I believe Mr. Draskovich is stipulating to the admission of 412 and 413.
That is correct.
They're admitted.
Sir, I'm going to put on the overhead states 412. Who are we looking at there?
Yeah, is that Jeff or something? Yeah, that's Jeff. Yeah, I can't tell what age. Oh my God, what age that is. But he was a natural athlete. He just loved baseball too, and I mean, I think when when he took me to that first Brewers game, he liked, I mean, he loved it as much as I did. Yeah.
And now I'm going to put on the overhead states 413. Looks like you're a bit older in this picture.
You know when this is from? This is from New Year's Eve, 1980, so December 31st. And I'll tell you, I can't remember if it's 79 or 80, but I was in college. Jeff had been out here, 1 or 2 years, and I flew to from Milwaukee to Las Vegas. It was my first time on an airplane, and this was the first trip that I took of many that would come going forward over the years. But he said, come on out, because I hadn't seen him since he moved out to Milwaukee, since he drove his car out here back in the middle of 1978. And we spent the New Year's Eve on the Strip. It was just a great night. I'll never forget it, and it was so memorable. I mean, and it was just, look how young he was.
Yeah.
So.
Is there anything else you'd like the jury to know about how this crime has impacted yourself and your family?
Well, it's been very stressful over the past couple of years. I wouldn't want anybody to go through this. It was devastating to the family. It really was. We loved him, and he loved us. And I mean, a big part of Jeff's life was spending time with the family. He loved the holidays for that very reason. He loved Thanksgiving. Just the whole ritual about him being with the family. So yeah, it's been, it's going to take a long time, I'm sure, for us to get past this, but we're doing our best, and we miss him a lot.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness, Sharon.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
The sale called Bill's Word.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
First name is Jill, Jill. Last name is Zwerg, Zwerg.
Thank you very much. Jill, if you could, just for the record, how are you related to Jeff?
I am the youngest sibling, and Jeffrey's the oldest.
Okay, so you're the baby of the family.
Pardon me?
You're the baby of the family?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I want to publish what's already been admitted by stipulation as states 415. Oh, 415 by stipulation. And I think I have exhibits 414 through 417. I think those all have been admitted by stipulation. That's correct, John.
That's 415 through 417, correct?
I think 414, 415, 416, and 417. Those four exhibits.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Publishing 415. Okay. So, who can you tell us who we're looking at here in all these photographs?
Well, that's the four of us. I'm the little tiny one in the left corner with the same haircut as Jay to my right.
Okay.
And then Jeff is a tall one, and then my sister Julie with the no teeth.
All right. I also now want to show you another exhibit, which is admitted by stipulation as 414. All right, who are we looking at here?
Well, there we are again. I don't know if we were trying to copy that first photo or not, but I believe it's at my niece's, a celebration for my niece, and we all just got together and tried to take a picture together real quick, and it was really kind of fun, actually.
Okay. I'm publishing 416. Who are we looking at here?
That's Uncle Jeff. That's my daughter. I think she's like 3 or 4 months old, and he couldn't wait to fly in and be with her. She is the firstborn of his nieces and nephews.
And what was her name? Or what is her
Jessica.
name? Jessica.
Her name.
And then I'd like to publish 417. What are we looking at?
That is Jeff with my son Connor, who is looks pretty much like Jeff, and just they're two peas in a pod. They both into sports and yeah, he just idolized him. He's the only nephew, so he just took to him immediately for that.
I know you've written something, but I do want to ask this. So you've looked at a couple of pictures, at Uncle Jeff. Mm-hmm. What was he like as an uncle?
Oh, he was wonderful. He just loved each and every one of them for who they were and accepted them for whatever. They would do quirky little fun things and just loved them with his heart and soul. Absolutely.
Did they grow up here in Las Vegas or somewhere else?
They all grew up here.
Okay, so Jeff was kind of here growing up and watching them be raised. Okay, well, listen, I know that you've written something that you'd like to read, so if you could, why don't you share what you've written, share it with the jury, please.
Okay. So most of you know my brother Jeffrey to be a hard-nosed investigative reporter who went after corruption in our city. He wrote about wrongdoings by mobsters, gaming officials, politicians, corporations, basically anyone who was corrupt, and I don't think they could hide from him. Let me give you a little insight to the man behind the byline of Jeffrey M. Garriman. Jeff was the eldest sibling of four, as I stated, and I'm the youngest. There's an 8-year difference between us. He always watched out for me and guided me in my schooling, my work, personal matters. I believe my other siblings, we welcomed his advice, as it usually was on target and gave us a good perspective when we needed it. He always was there for me when I needed him, like a second father for me. And with the age difference, I think that was part of it. After I graduated college, Jeff was very instrumental in helping me acquire my first job here in Las Vegas at the newspaper where he was working. We are very much alike, from our chosen careers to the music we listened to, the food we enjoyed, and going out to happy hours after work. Of course, that was the 80s, that's when it all happened, and that was just a fun thing to do. I remember we were both on the media softball league together, representing the newspaper. It was so much fun, especially when we won games and we would celebrate afterwards. I wasn't going to say this, but now I just feel like I'm lucky to hear this. He was the first one I told when I became engaged. We were at Mount Charleston. My now husband proposed to me. It was a Friday night, and we're like, well, now what do we do? He's like, let's go tell Jeff. So we couldn't wait to get back. We knew he'd be at TGI Fridays. He was the first one I told when I got engaged. And he bought a round of champagne for the entire bar. And I'll just never forget that. It was just the most memorable, fun, exciting moment for all of us. I miss reading his stories and seeing his byline. And the shopping with him, talking on the phone, and texting with him, because he was so bad at texting. Going out for Sunday brunches, having him at our family barbecues and holiday celebrations, especially, as my brother Jay said, at Thanksgiving, where he really ate most of the dark meat and insisted that the TV be on, some type of sporting event, probably football, if I'm not mistaken. These events, these holidays, they'll never be the same without Jeffrey there, ever. He was kind, he was loving, he was loyal, and he was fun. He was a good friend, uncle, brother, and a respected colleague to all who knew him. He had a knack for remembering everyone's birthdays. He never forgot his nieces' and nephews' birthdays. He just loved being their uncle. My son is very much like his Uncle Jeff. They shared a mutual passion for the sports, particularly basketball and football, and of course all the Wisconsin teams, as you know, that's where we're from. My daughter also had a special bond with her Uncle Jeff. They shared a lot in common, like both being Virgos and having journalism degrees as well. I remember asking Jeff why he chose to stay here and not be at other major newspapers who frequently recruited him. He said, Jill, this is Las Vegas, this is Sin City. This is where I need to be. Jeff is fearless of all the corrupt people he called out in his reporting of the mobsters, politicians, casino executives, and so on. Professionally, Jeff had many headline stories that made the national news. Some of you may or may not remember this, but they were breaking news, such as the Judge Harry Claiborne impeachment trial. I was here when that happened. To reporting Chicago mobster Tony the Ants, Spilotro, and his brothers' murders, to being the first to report Liberace's death and his AIDS diagnosis. Those are just a few of the many breaking stories for Jeff, and they all came out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Jeff was a trusted, top-notch journalist, An author with a top-rated Lifetime Network television movie made from his book, The Death of a Las Vegas Casino Boss, Murder in Sin City, and that was the Ted Binion murder story. His award-winning podcast, Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, is still heard by many. He belonged to a class of journalists that are in a league of their own. Not many reporters out there will ever match his caliber and investigative journalism and storytelling. These past 2 years, it felt like I've been living in a chapter of a murder novel as it unfolds. One that my brother Jeff could have written, entitled Murder in Sin City, Part 2, The Death of a Journalist. I never imagined that Jeff himself would have become a national headline news story for his murder by a cold-blooded elected city official in broad daylight. But in typical Jeff fashion, he was able to have his attacker identified and locked up behind bars after his own murder. Not only did my family lose a wonderful, loving brother and uncle, but the Las Vegas community and the world of journalism lost an amazing investigative reporter and a relentless crusader for justice. To everyone else, Jeffrey M. Gehrman was a dedicated and respected journalist. To me, my family, he was our big brother Jeff and our children's loving uncle. He is so deeply missed every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You may step down and you may call your next witness.
Julie Smith.
Please watch your step.
Remain standing, raise your right hand, face clear.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Julie Smith, Julie, Julie, Smith, Smith.
Ms. Smith, you are the fourth sibling of the Gehrman group.
Yes.
I'm going to show you some pictures. I believe Mr. Draskovich will stipulate to the admission of 418 to 423.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And this one I think I get what the event is, but I'll have you describe it. This is States 418.
Yes. This is my daughter Lexi's wedding. So it was nice. We were all together as a family. It was in Lake Tahoe, and she's been married for about, I think it's 8 years.
And now I'm going to put on the overhead States 419.
That's Jeff and my daughter Morgan. They were very close.
And this is States 420.
That's Jeff. I don't know when that picture was taken.
That's okay. 421.
Another picture of Jeff. I'm not sure where that was either. My sister dug up some old pictures.
And this is 422. Looks like the kids are a little younger to me in this one.
Oh yeah, that was a celebration for my youngest daughter, Lexi. It was just a fun celebration. Everyone had their beads on and they were happy, and we got a picture of Jeff with his 3 nieces. Jesse's in there, Morgan, Lexi.
And 423.
Oh, that's a picture of Jeffrey when the girls were young, so it's with Morgan and Lexi. They were just on the couch, and of course there's always a cat in our house, so there's a picture of Daisy with them also.
So it seems like Jeff was a pretty devoted uncle.
Oh my goodness, yes. He loved his nieces, he loved his nephew. He loved just to be around them whenever he could.
And your other siblings have commented that holidays were particularly important for him. Is that your recollection as well?
Very important. We always grew up in our family in Milwaukee when the 4 of us with my mom and dad. And my mom was always kind of the matriarch. She always made a spread for every holiday that we would celebrate. And my sister Jill and Jay, we've continued that with our families.
And have you prepared a statement that you'd like?
I did. Okay, that's okay. So as you know, Jeff was my older brother. Everyone in our family pretty much looked up to Jeff. He was our oldest sibling. So he always had a very special place in our hearts for Jeff. He just seemed to be the core of our family since my parents were gone. And we all pretty much migrated because of Jeff living here. So it was nice we were all together finally. Most people who dealt with Jeff, the journalist, knew him to be no nonsense, a straight shooter, who always searched for the truth. He had a nose for sniffing out the corrupt, the nefarious. We knew him to be those things too, but we were very proud of his many years of service to the community and his numerous accolades as a newspaper reporter. But we also saw the side of Jeff that most people, unfortunately, didn't get to experience. Jeff loved his family. He loved spending time with his nieces and nephews. He was especially close to them. As I said previously, he looked forward to hanging out with them whenever he could, especially during family holidays. Basically, Jeff was a family man. He loved being with his family. Sometimes at those family gatherings, it was kind of the place for Jeff to display his playful and awesome biting sense of humor. He loved sitcoms and was especially fond of 2.5 Men and Seinfeld. He had many of the classic lines committed to memory from those shows, and he would use them often. He liked to have a good time. He was always willing to put together a family dinner. He loved to have breakfast with his friends from the newsroom. He just really enjoyed being with people. He loved sports, especially football. I guess you could say it was almost like an obsession with him. Like his commitment to journalism, he took that same approach to his commitment with sports. He could take notes, he knew the stats of players. He pretty much had a near photographic memory, and he could recite almost any score of any game. In another life, Jeff could have been a Las Vegas odds maker. And of course, there was the quirky side of Jeff that we teased him about. His house was meticulous, almost to being a point that it was like a good housekeeping, Better Homes and Garden setup in his house. He was into symmetry. If there was a lamp here on one side of the room, it had to be on the other side. It's kind of interesting. But you can see from these few examples how much Jeff meant to our family and how much we will all miss him. Sorry, I'm the emotional one. We're never going to be able to share laughter with him again, discuss sports with him, enjoy a barbecue with him, or admire his tenacious spirit. The tragic and brutal taking of his life has resulted in a loss that I don't think we'll recover. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You can step down.
That concludes the witnesses we'll be presenting, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Draskowitz.
And we'd like to call Mary Ann Ismail.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
I do.
That face you just made. Did you guys see that? Call him back again.
Watch your step.
Okay. Just put this lower.
Yeah, that's right. And if you'll remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Mary Ann Ismail, M-A-R-Y-A-N-N. Last name is I-S-M-A-E-L.
Thank you. Marianne, do you go by May?
Yes, I go by May.
You know Robert.
Just a little. Yes, I do.
Tell us how you know him and tell us about the two of you, please.
Yeah, so Robert is my husband. We met 15 years ago. We've been married almost 14 years. And it's been well, you know, every marriage has its ups and downs, but it's been a good marriage overall, I would say.
Were you with him when he went through law school?
Yes, yes. In fact, when we first got married, we not only had a baby, but he also started law school at the same time. So, very busy time.
And how was that? What type of law student was he?
He's like, his work ethic is second to none. I've never met anybody who worked so hard, who was so ambitious and just wanted to do everything to not only move himself ahead, but to also make sure that he was able to provide for his family.
And what kind of a provider was he for your family?
He was a great provider. So, you know, not just monetarily, but also he was there. We're a blended family. So I have my son, his daughter, and then we have our youngest one is together. And he was always there, especially for our kids. He attended every single school event. Even if I couldn't make it, he was always there. He was the one that helped them with homework because I have very little patience. And he has just this unlimited amount of patience and was always able to walk our kids through, you know, difficult math problems or word problems or whatever it is that they were struggling with. He was always the one that was with them after school and helping them through you know, schoolwork. He was also the fun parent. So he would be the one that would always present ideas like going for a hike as a family, and he was always the one that wanted. So he was very much, he loved to celebrate holidays and milestones, and always had something up his sleeve. So Easter, for example, was always a big deal. He was the one that would get super excited about decorating eggs with the kids and stuffing the little plastic eggs and hiding them all over our yard. So our kids would have such an amazing time searching. And you know, he shared a lot of his Mexican traditions with our families. Well, I'm Filipino, so he would share a lot of his traditions with our kids. So like things like where they have like the empty egg that's decorated and it's full of confetti, and you crack it on the kids' heads. Like, he introduced that to our children, and they just he always had something. Even our wedding anniversaries. I always forgot our wedding anniversaries, but he never did. Always had a gift, always had something planned, even if it's just a dinner with just the two of us. One year he had planned this whole weekend getaway where we went up to Zion, we went hiking, he had planned like different tours where we went rappelling, and it was just the most amazing weekend, and it was so much fun.
I'm going to show you, and Your Honor, we have a number of photographs that are in a drive that will be given to the jury, if I may publish, and they're going to be admitted by way of stipulation.
That's right. You three. They are published.
This is a picture here of you and your family, and this is a little bit older photo, and I know there's been a lot of press that this case has drawn. I'm not going to ask you the names of your children for obvious reasons, but this is a picture of you and your husband and your mixed family.
Yes.
Blended family.
Yes, our blended family.
You each had a child from a prior marriage, and then you had one in common.
Correct. Yeah.
How did he treat all three children?
Obviously the two girls are his, but he never treated my son any differently. So when we first met and we first started dating, my son was 3. And so, but he never, even to this day, he doesn't treat him any differently than he treats any of the other kids. So,
He was
calls
fair.
him my son. It's always, he refers to the 2 girls as, his sisters, or he would talk to his sisters about, oh, that's your brother. And it was never a question about, there was no stepbrother or half brother. It was just their brothers and sisters, period.
And that's fairly uncommon based upon talking to friends and other experiences.
Yeah.
Fair to say. In addition to being a family man, an attorney, having gone through law school during your marriage, was he involved in any community activities?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, even throughout law school, even before law school, so he was a very active Rotarian with the local Rotary Club here in Las Vegas. He was always involved with community service, planning events. He's offered his law services to help start other nonprofit organizations. And he would be the first one to volunteer if anyone ever needed help that he knew that he can assist with. And it inspired me so much that I actually became a Rotarian with a different club, which and it was something that we just shared together.
Is there anything else that you'd like to tell this jury that I perhaps have failed to ask you?
Robert is an amazing father, and like I said, even to this day, he tries to stay involved with the kids. He tries to share some type of an experience with them, even when he was at the detention center. Like him and my youngest daughter, they would talk about anime and manga, and they would send each other drawings that they had. And he really tried to continue fostering the relationship with his children, even when he couldn't be there, in person. Always made sure checked on, even would check on schoolwork, so I would love for my children to not lose that, at least not for the rest of their lives. Robert really is a great father, and he's a good husband, and I would love at some point to give my children the chance to have their father back.
Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions.
No, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony here today.
Thank you.
You may step down. You may call the next witness.
Tanya Burton.
Please watch corner of the TV. Right over here, Mark. Step up to the witness stand, please. Thank you. If you will remain standing, raise your right hand, face clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Tanya Burton, Tonia. Last name is Burton as in Nancy.
Thank you. Ma'am, obviously you know Robert Tellis.
I do.
Please tell us how you know him.
Robert Tellis was my first husband. We have a daughter together who is an amazing child.
Due to the amount of press attention this case has garnered, I'm not going to ask you your daughter's name.
Thank you.
How old is she?
She's 16 years old.
What can you tell us about Robert Tellis?
He is a great dad to her. He loves her. She misses him every day. He always helped her with so much of her homework because, I mean, I'm going to be honest, he's higher educated than me, and he's just good at that stuff. He's very patient, very thorough. They would spend Sundays together.
So he's an attentive father.
Absolutely. He was part of her soccer team for a while when she was younger, a great advocate for her diabetes, always up on the new technology.
And in reference to your daughter's diabetes, what type of a father, what type of caretaker was he with your daughter with
From the time she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, he was up on every single new technology, every single sensor, every single new idea, very big on what kind of diet she could have, what she needed, what she shouldn't have. Most of our arguments, even later, were over what she should and shouldn't have, and he was usually right.
Fair to say he's been a very hands-on dad.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And even given your separation from him, his new marriage, he's continued to co-parent with you the best he could.
Absolutely. Robert always involved even my newer stepkids and his family. They went trick-or-treating together. They celebrated all kinds of special events together.
So even though you had moved on and then ultimately had your own stepkids, he included them in his family activities?
Absolutely. I don't think there was one Christmas that went by with no gift, no anything. He was very involved in Olivia's sisters. You know, they were her sisters.
Fair to say that Robert's intelligent?
Absolutely.
Has a hard work ethic?
He does. A lot of drive.
In your opinion, is he capable of change, learning?
Absolutely. I believe he can get anything done if he chooses to, if he has that direction.
In addition to these questions that I've asked you, is there anything that you'd like to tell this jury that I have not asked you?
My daughter is 16 years old, and she misses her dad. And I know that you've made your decision, but I have hope that one day he can walk her down the aisle when she chooses to get married. When she has children, I'd like him to have the chance to be there with her, for her.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any comments?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
Our final witness will be Rosa Anaya.
Yes, ma'am. Please watch your step. If you'll remain standing, raise your right hand and face the clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this.
Right hand and face the clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may be seated.
Thank you.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Rosalinda Anaya, Rosalinda, last name Anaya.
Ms. Anaya, you are Robert's mother.
Yes.
Tell us about him and about your other children.
I was 18 years old when Robert was born, and he was my world. 3 years after, I had another son, and my daughter is 6 years younger. And he was a great big brother. Always took care of his siblings, was very loving. He never fought with them.
I'm going to show you a picture that you had sent to us and has been admitted by stipulation.
It's from
Who's
my
in
boys.
this picture?
My two sons.
This one on the left, is that Robert?
Yes.
And the one on the right?
Is my other son, his brother.
How old was Robert, if you can recall, when this picture was taken?
Probably about 5.
showing another picture that's been admitted?
That's when Robert was 8 months old. When he was born, he was my world.
And you would have been 19?
Yes, in that picture, I'm 19 years old.
Were you a working mother?
Not at that point, but when Robert was 13, I got a divorce from his father. And that's when Robert became the man of the house.
Going to show you this group of pictures that you had sent us. Why don't you start with the left of the screen and describe to us what we're seeing?
That's Robert as a toddler. Right there, he was probably 2 years old. The top picture is Robert with his girls at the father-daughter dance. And then the other two, you.
Fair to say, obviously, this case has been very difficult for you and your family.
Very.
You had said that you began working, you were 13. I'm sorry, when he was 13, you went back to work after the divorce. Tell me about what it was like with him as your oldest child.
Like I said, he became the man of the house. At 13, I was working full-time, going to school in the evenings. So he took care of his siblings, made sure that they were fed, got them to bed, because I got home so late. Also at 13, I was a single mom. I remember I couldn't afford to buy them school clothes and shoes, and we would go pick chili. And I remember he was 13, and our hands were burning because the chili was so hot, even though we were wearing gloves. I'd fill up the buckets, and he would take them to the truck, and we would make like $2 a bucket. And it was a lot of hard work and a lot of buckets just to be able to buy them school shoes.
Where did Robert grow up?
In Texas, in El Paso, Texas.
And what was that like? What was his childhood like in El Paso, Texas?
Like I say, he was a very good boy, very loving, very supportive of his siblings and myself. On occasion, when I was threatened once physically, he was very protective and, came to my rescue to protect me, and he was only 13. Once he was in high school, he got a job at a gas station. He would also help take his brother and sister to school in the morning, pick them up after school. Has always been very loving, a great son, great brother.
Has Robert always had a good work ethic?
Very. Like I said, at 13, he started working with me in the fields, then in gas station. As an adult, he was an IT tech, then heating and cooling, HVAC tech during the day, and then went to law school in the evening.
So
Always wanted to better himself.
Put himself through law school?
Yes.
While being a father?
Yes.
Finally, you've obviously had an opportunity to see him interact with your grandchildren and step-grandchildren. Just tell us about that.
He's an excellent dad. Always very involved. And like I said, even with me, as an adult, always help me financially, emotionally. I have a lot of health issues. He was always on top of that. Even to this day, we talk several times a week.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I say one last thing, Judge, please?
Please, do you have another, there's something else that you'd like to tell us?
Yes. I ask you to please, I accept the verdict. And if you could please give my son a chance of parole. His family is still very young, and I would like for him to someday be back with them again. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm done.
No, you're welcome. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Judge.
That concludes our presentation.
All right. Okay, so at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short recess. When you come back, you have an opportunity.
I love you so.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. And when you come back, you'll have an opportunity to hear from both sides in their closing argument. We'll go with Officer Cox, and he will bring you back in when we're ready. Thank you very much. You're excused.
Thank you all. Direction here for
We just needed to formally settle the instructions.
Understood.
Is the state familiar with course proposed instructions 1 through 13?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Any further instructions to propose?
No, thank you.
And you're familiar with the verdict form?
Yes.
Any objection?
No.
Okay, Mr. Drospich, are you familiar with course proposed 1 through 13?
Yes, I am.
Any objection?
No objections.
Any further instructions to propose?
That have not been given, no.
Okay, and have you looked at the verdict form as well?
We haven't, we have no objection to it.
Okay, all right. Probably about 15 minutes and then we'll come back in and start.
Thank you.
All right, 15 minutes. That was surprising. I did not know that his family and wife and ex-wife and mother would all be testifying. It was so good to hear from Jeff Garman's family. It was heartbreaking. I'm so grateful that they humanized him and shared even more about him and who he was. So in about 15 more minutes, we will be back. I'm going to just turn my camera off and hit this on mute, and then we will learn. I'm quite shocked that his mother asked for parole. I always have empathy for a mother on the stand. But that was a little surprising, almost like she didn't understand the gravity of what he had just been found guilty of. Wow. All right. So thank you, Troublemaker. So she's saying in about 15 minutes, the judge will read jury instructions. There might be closing statements from both sides, and then the jury reconvenes and may take some time to determine his sentence. So that's the next step. We will be here. I'm going to mute. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Justice for Jeff. Tellis needs to stay in prison. Dr. John is watching. We are texting. He's watching intently. So, all right, guys. We'll be back.
Stipulate to the presence of the panel?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have been provided with, Hawks, have you passed out the jury instructions? You will be provided with a copy of the jury instructions. There are 13 of them. I'm required to read them to you. As you know, you'll each have your own packet. You can follow along, and you'll be able to take them with you when you go back to deliberate. Number 1, is now my duty as judge to instruct you in the law that applies to this penalty hearing. It is your duty as jurors to follow these instructions and to apply the rules of law to the facts as you find them from the evidence. You must not be concerned with the wisdom of any rule of law stated in these instructions. Regardless of any opinion you may have as to what the law ought to be, it would be a violation of your oath to pass a verdict upon any other view of the law than that given in the instructions of the court. Number 2, if in these instructions any rule, direction, idea is repeated or stated in different ways, no emphasis thereon is intended by me, and none may be inferred by you. For that reason, you are not to single out any certain sentence or any individual point or instruction, ignore the others, but you are to consider all the instructions as a whole and regard each in the light of all the others. Number 3, the trial jury shall fix the punishment for every person convicted of murder of the first degree. The jury shall fix the punishment at 1, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, which means exactly what it says, that the defendant shall not be eligible for parole. Number 2, life imprisonment with the possibility of parole with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has been served. Or 3, a definite term of 50 years with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has been served. Number 4, 4. A prison term of 50 years with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has been served does not mean that the defendant would be paroled after 20 years, but only that he or she would be eligible for parole after that period of time. Life imprisonment with the possibility of parole is a sentence to life imprisonment, which provides that the defendant would be eligible for parole after a period of 20 years. This does not mean that he would be paroled after 20 years, but only that he would be eligible for parole after that period of time. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole means exactly what it says, that the defendant shall not be eligible for parole. Number 5, in the penalty hearing, evidence may be presented concerning aggravating and mitigating circumstances relative to the offense and any other evidence that bears on the defendant's character. Hearsay is admissible in a penalty hearing. Number 6, a reasonable doubt is one based on reason, is not mere possible doubt, but is such a doubt as would govern or control a person in the more weighty affairs of life. If the minds of the jurors, after the entire comparison and consideration of all of the evidence, are in such a condition that they can say they feel an abiding conviction of the truth of the charge, there is not a reasonable doubt. Doubt to be reasonable must be actual, not mere possibility or speculation. Number 7, the jury is instructed that in determining the appropriate penalty to be imposed in this case, and it may consider all evidence introduced and instructions given at both the penalty hearing phase of these proceedings and at the trial of this matter. Number 8, in your deliberation, you may not discuss or consider the subject of guilt or innocence of a defendant, as that issue has already been decided. Your duty is confined to determination of the punishment to be imposed. Number 9, the credibility or believability of a witness should be determined by his manner upon the stand, his relationship to the parties, his fears, motives, interests, or feelings, his opportunity to have observed the matter to which he testified, the reasonableness of his statements, and the strength or weakness of his recollections. If you believe that a witness has lied about any material fact in the case, you may disregard the entire testimony of that witness or any portion of his testimony which is not proved by other evidence. Number 10, although you are to consider only the evidence in the case and reach a verdict, you must bring to the consideration of the evidence your everyday common sense and judgment as reasonable men and women. Thus, you are not limited solely to what you see and hear as the witnesses testify. You may draw reasonable inferences from the evidence which you feel are justified in the light of common experience, keeping in mind that such inferences should not be based on speculation or guess. A verdict may never be influenced by sympathy, prejudice, or public opinion. Your decision should be the product of sincere judgment and sound discretion in accordance with these rules of law. Number 11, during your deliberation, you are not to communicate with anyone other than your fellow jurors in the jury deliberation room in any manner regarding the facts and circumstances of this case or its merits, either by phone, email, text messaging, internet, or other means. You're admonished not to read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. You are not permitted to do any independent research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or any other reference materials. You are further admonished to not conduct any investigation, test a theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other manner investigate or learn about the case on your own. Number 12, during your deliberation, you will have all the exhibits which were admitted into evidence, these written instructions and forms of verdict which have been prepared for your convenience. Your verdict must be unanimous. When you've agreed upon your verdicts, they should be signed and dated by your foreperson. Number 13, now you will listen to the arguments of counsel, who will endeavor to aid you to reach a proper verdict by refreshing in your minds the evidence and by showing the application thereof to the law. But whatever counsel may say, you will bear in mind that it is your duty to be governed in your deliberation by the evidence as you understand it, and remember it to be and by the laws given to you in these instructions, with the sole fixed and steadfast purpose of doing equal and exact justice between the defendant and the state of Nevada. The state may address the panel.
Your Honor, the state's going to waive the first close and reserve for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Draskovich.
Thank you. You know, the jury instruction that I would like you to look at, and please pay close attention to, is jury instruction number 4. Jury instruction number 4 lays out the penalties that you are to consider at this stage in the case. You've heard a great deal of testimony in this case. You've seen a lot of exhibits. You've been attentive. We're basically rounding third base here, and you're headed home, and I'm going to ask you to, again, apply the same attentiveness. the same effort and the same energy that you've expended up to this point. You know, when we pass judgment, it's an awesome responsibility because it takes two. It takes one to pass the judgment, and one takes one to receive it. The judgment that you make in this case will place an indelible life, or an indelible mark upon his life and yours as well. You've heard from the families, and in this case, we have two devastated families. Both families, through no actions of their own, have received the trauma of this case. The question now that's been put at your feet and that you must determine and you must pass judgment on as being the sole determinant of the facts is what's the appropriate sentence. You know, there's generally four purposes of sentencing. First would be that of restitution. Well, in this case, it's a murder case. There's not going to be a return of Jeff Gehrman's life, but then the question becomes, what does that mean? No sentence whatsoever that could be imposed is ever going to change that. The second purpose or consideration in the area of sentencing concerns deterrence. There's a fair amount of science on this subject, and you know, our criminal justice system does the very best it can, but heavy punishments in capital cases, capital punishments don't really have a deterrent effect. What we do have in our sentencing scheme in this state and most others are very harsh sentences. Every sentence that you are to consider will be the sentence imposed when you ultimately make your determination. It's not like a person gets sentenced and gets their sentence commuted. No, what you decide is the sentence that stays. You know, the third purpose or consideration in sentencing is rehabilitation. And we're making steps in this society and in this state concerning rehabilitation. Any sentence that you determine is appropriate involves a heavy prison sentence. We've heard from Robert's family. He's smart. He's capable of learning. He's got a work ethic. Any sentence that you impose, there's going to be a long period of incarceration, perhaps forever. And I'm going to ask you not to do that. But every sentence will have a period, a substantial period of time that would allow for rehabilitation. The fourth purpose or consideration is retribution. You know, I mean, most of us, this community kind of comes from this old Judeo-Christian, most societies, most cultures have this idea of retribution. And I would submit to you that as a society we've gotten past this idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You know, we end up being blind and toothless. You know, oftentimes though in society, and I will submit to you now in this stage of this case, there's just tug of war, really, between retribution and redemption. You know, in order for justice to be justice, there needs to be an element of mercy. You know, a person has to pay. There has to be this idea of punishment for a crime. But at the same time, there has to be this element of hope. You know, I'm not a religious person, but I know much of our society is religious in nature, and we have these ideas of atonement, you know, forgiveness. I would submit to you that we don't forgive to let an offender off. Forgiveness involves preserving ourselves. As a society, we have to have this element of mercy when it comes to justice. There has to be this element of forgiveness. Question then becomes, will there be this opportunity of redemption? What's going to happen in his life now? You've heard pretty compelling evidence, testimony from his family. You've seen the pictures. He's a loving dad. to his natural children and those that aren't. He's got a work ethic. He's intelligent. He can learn. You know, the sentence that you decide, this connection that will leave this indelible mark on his life, how's it going to affect his family? His children? You've heard the evidence. We respect your verdict. What happens now? Give him the opportunity, give those children the opportunity at one time, decades from now, the opportunity to have their father back, their stepfather back. Maybe even his mom will be alive at the time when he's released. Let her have the opportunity to have her son back. It's a heavy burden. The judge has instructed you. Obviously, you're duty bound, as you have been in the initial phase of this case, to follow those instructions. Allow for there to be mercy in this determination. He's not going to speak to you through this course. Given the posture of this case, he's maintained his innocence, but don't punish him for that. You know, he's exercised his right to go to trial. This is what makes this country so great. You know, trial by jury, trial by our peers. Hold the state to their burden. That's occurred. You've passed your judgment. Please don't punish him for exercising his constitutional right, which is one of, again, these ideas that we adopted from this old English common law and that our founder fathers embedded in our Constitution. Please don't punish him for doing that, for holding the state to its burden. And they've done an exemplary job presenting their case. You've done an exemplary job reviewing the evidence. But now the question as to the appropriate penalty. What is it? It's not life without. The man has no criminal history. He's 48 years old. He's led an otherwise exemplary life. Put himself through school, worked climbing ladders, doing HVAC, raised kids. He's involved with his daughter's diabetes. He researches it. And even now, as he sits in custody, he's been a hands-on father. You know, oftentimes we deal in the criminal justice system with these recidivists. You know, people that commit crimes over and over again and they just don't learn. You know, that's an appropriate sentence, life without. That's what you give a man that doesn't learn from his mistakes. That's what you give a man that continues to break the law, puts other people in danger. Given your decision, you have found that he's committed a crime, and now the question is, what's the appropriate punishment? I mean, I know firsthand, you apply to the bar, you have to give up every traffic ticket. If you're already going to get expelled, they know about it. He was a licensed attorney. I'm not in any way saying that makes him a better person, but it shows that he had the wherewithal to put himself through school, to learn, and he had the background that allowed him to become a lawyer. That's gone. Give him a chance when he's an old man to maybe be around his grandkids or for them to be around him. He has a lot to give. Regardless of what's been proven in this case, regardless of what's happened, he has more to give. Locking him up, throwing away the key doesn't do him any good. It doesn't do his family any good. It doesn't do our society any good. Show him mercy, please. I'd submit to you that as a society, it's the appropriate thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The state may address the jury.
Thank you. Just take down. Can I proceed? Thank you so much. I want to touch on a few things. I think what you've seen over the course of this trial, when you've listened to, at least in this phase, when crimes like this are committed, they have a ripple effect. No one wins when crimes like these are committed. But one of the things that has to be abundantly clear about this is we're only here because of the actions of one person and one person alone. And it's the defendant. It was the manner in which the defendant chose to handle the situation that has created this ripple effect on his family as well as Jeff's. One of the things, when you do this long enough in our line of work, you see a lot of people come through the system. And the state would submit to you, he is not similarly situated to a lot of people. He is highly educated. He comes from a good, loving family. I'm not saying everyone does, but his upbringing is pretty good. When you think about the situation that he was in, the world wasn't going to end. He had simply lost an election. And the way Robert Tellis chose to handle this was devastating. And it was his choice and his choice alone. No one forced his hand. And so one of the things that we need to talk about is this idea of what they mentioned, retribution, redemption versus retribution. When you think about what happened in this case, think about the act that he committed upon Jeff. What was that? It was an act of retribution. Robert Tellis decided to be judge, jury, and literally the executioner of a man who was simply trying to do his job, to report the news. He executed him. He didn't have to do that. But that is how Mr. Tellis felt it was appropriate to deal with this situation. And he has taken this man away, essentially, at that time, the patriarch of his family away from his family. And why? Because he simply wasn't happy with what was being written about him. That is an extraordinarily serious thing to be considered when you evaluate what is the appropriate punishment. Because this is the way Mr. Tellis decides to handle things when he feels slighted. Another thing that the defense brought up was there needs to be a measure of atonement. We agree, atonement is appropriate in certain circumstances. But think about this. The defendant, when he got up and took the stand, was willing to sacrifice the reputations of a company like Compass Realty, the employees that work for Compass Realty, members of the Public Administration's Office, multiple members, specifically Detective Gaddis, Detective Jaffe, Detective Mogg, members of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, their DNA lab, even the District Attorney's Office. Why? All to save himself. The state would submit that that is the length that he was willing to go to save himself. And it needs to be considered when you're evaluating what is the appropriate punishment. That's a really scary thought. I want to address something else. What is the appropriate punishment? The state would submit to you that life is an appropriate punishment. Whether it is an eligibility for parole after 20 years or life without the possibility of parole, I'm going to leave that to you. but I want to at least explain to you why the state believes a life sentence is appropriate. One of the reasons is, what did we learn about this case? That Mr. Tellis decided to exact death upon someone who he felt slighted against. And he certainly has shared all the different people he feels slighted against. The beauty of a life sentence is even if he's eligible for parole, if he gets out, he'll always be monitored. Because there is a future of dangerousness going forward. If he truly believes that all of these people did something to him, then there is a risk that something like this could happen again. It should be considered. Another factor as to why we believe life is appropriate. I don't want to paint it in too broad of strokes, but we cannot, the state doesn't believe that we should ignore the fact that what happened here was literally a journalist wrote a story or a series of stories and lost their life over it. Because someone or a politician, outgoing politician, just did not like the consequences of the writing. That's a pretty serious thing. That doesn't happen very often, and it should be considered. Which is why we believe life is appropriate. At the end of the day, whether parole eligibility is something that you wish to grant, we'll leave that up to you. But at the end of the day, he was a highly intelligent person with a loving family, with a good background, who really did have his future ahead of him. His life really wasn't over. But he let probably his ego, his pride, get in the way, and it manifested itself in the worst possible way. And we have lost one of the most significant journalists we've had in our community in the world of investigative journalism. So we thank you for your patience and your time. And we wish that you consider these factors when evaluating which of the three punishments are appropriate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hanley. At this time, the officers of the court will take charge of the jury panel. You can take your notebooks, your jury instructions, and you are excused to deliberate upon your verdict.
Thank you. All right, the acting jury, please. Third.
And the seal, the Nevada seal, is back. Hey guys, I just talked to John on the phone. He's gonna jump on for about 15 minutes here in a little bit. So stay tuned because while we wait, you're gonna be able to look at more than the Nevada seal. So stay with us. Yeah. Okay. Everyone, I know you can't see. I know you guys can't see me, but I am here. And so that's true. What mother wouldn't beg for parole? Some. But anyway, yeah, John is jumping on. I'm loving all your comments. You guys are making me think. Sorry, I'm like thinking out loud. Yeah, that's a good point. What mother wouldn't? So here, I'll just. Yeah, for those just tuning in, John is coming. Let your friends know that maybe signed off for a little bit. He said to just give him like 5 minutes. Turn this off. So he'll be on soon. He can't stay on too long. He's got to go pick up our son, but he's been watching. We're talking, so he wants to jump on. Okay, so stay tuned. I'll go back to mute and stop my camera and then just plan on us soon. We'll be here soon. Hey guys, Dr. John is almost ready. He's working on it. In the meantime, for those to remind, oh, here he is. John, are you ready? Can I add you? Oh, I can't hear you though. Let's see. Maybe I can hear you when you're on. Hey, can I hear you? Say something.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, let us
Can you hear me?
we'll make us a little bit bigger. All right. Wait, no, you disappeared. Oh no, but now I feel like we need the seal of Nevada just for as like a comfort blanket. No, let's see. We'll do this. Okay, everyone. We can see the Nevada seal. So we are good. We are good.
You can? Where is it? Oh, it's.
I can see it
okay.
backstage. So my point being,
Right.
I'm aware if anything happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, the seal of Nevada. We got to make a seal of Nevada T-shirt now.
Yeah.
We've all been invested in it for so long.
Those smokestacks are really inspirational.
Yes. All right. Dr. John is in the house, as Sassy Pants says. Exactly. What is going on? You've been watching. I miss you, by the way. It's good to see you, babe.
Yeah. Thank you. I miss you too. You're coming home tomorrow.
Yes.
Rumor has it.
Yeah. Rumor has it. We'll see. You wish. No, just kidding. Yes, I am. What? Okay. Let's talk. Tell us. I know you don't have very long, so.
Yeah. Well, so first thing is we're going to try to get some jurors that we can interview because I'm going to be fascinated by the deliberation process. And it seems to me in retrospect that maybe they were going through all of the evidence again fairly meticulously, and maybe that's why it took so long. But I'll be curious to see if it was something else. Was it one juror or a couple of jurors that hung the other jurors up that believed in the conspiracy, right? So I think we should try. We're going to try to get some jurors and do some interviews there to kind of figure out what went on in that room behind closed doors. I think that'll be really interesting.
I agree. In the end, they came back with guilty, but it took them about 3 days longer than I thought.
Yeah, it took. Right. If I don't know the total hours they deliberated, but I mean, I thought it would be like Daybell, that they'd come back quickly, and it was not Daybell. So the jurors definitely took their time, which was interesting because I don't recall a case quite like this in terms of such compelling evidence from start to finish. So it was a little confusing, but again, I'd really like to. We'll try to touch base with some of the jurors and see if they're willing to do an interview with us.
Yes, absolutely. So where do you want to start? I mean, I'm so intrigued by the victim impact statements. We heard from his wife. We heard from his ex-wife. We heard from Jeff Garman's family, which you texted me during that time and said, it's so sad. You were heartbroken.
Yeah.
What do you want to...
I said that, watching the victim impact statements, it always reminds me of why we do this.
That's what you said.
Yeah, it's always tragic and heartbreaking, but from our perspective, I think it reminds us of why this is important work and why we do this, because ultimately I'd like to think that our work is about justice and giving a voice to the victims and, just seeing things that other people aren't necessarily seeing to help with cases, or, finding some things that are hidden, or adding a perspective that might be useful for justice or for victims and their families.
Yeah.
So I think I was reminded of that. obviously those moments put a human face on everything, including when Tellis's family members spoke, including his mother. It's a reminder there that the Draskevich, who's the defense attorney, said that too. That it reminds us that this is about a web of a network of human beings that have all suffered, some negative consequences because of one person's actions.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the victims' statements were amazing and heartbreaking, and I mean, it's kind of, it's a reminder of why the community is mourning the loss of Jeff Gehrman and why it's so heartbreaking, and just that he was a very involved person with his family and his siblings and their kids, and he loved them and spent time with them, and apparently he loved sports, and he was a fearless reporter, right? I mean, there were so many things to like about him, and I think it really allowed us to get a better feel for him too. So I'll start with that, and it reminded me of the importance of his life and how he mattered, not just to so many people, but to the community, and how he did really important work. And in the end, he was punished or he was murdered for that work. So it certainly really brought him to life. And, we did a tribute. I think the show we did a couple of weeks ago, we did a tribute to his work. But this really gave us a different perspective of how much he was involved with family and how much that mattered. So I thought that was really moving and important.
I agree. And then during the trial, we heard from his neighbors who found him, and he had been their neighbor for 20 years. And I think also it showed what a good neighbor he was. They were heartbroken. They cared about him. They were friends. Like he took care of his family. He took care of his neighbors and his community. And then he took care of his neighbors, and he took care of his community. He was a very caring, giving man.
He was very passionate about many things. And I think that came through. He was passionate about his work. He was passionate about sports. He was passionate about his family, his siblings, and their children. So that was very, very touching to me.
Yes, as well. During the victim impact statements for Tellis, I forget I don't have a mic, so I have to bend over.
Okay.
We learned a little bit more about him too, about his childhood, being the man of the house at a very young age. His work ethic, and I use that in quotes, was highlighted by everyone. His wife, his ex-wife, his attorney. That was interesting. His mother, that was a trend. What did you notice and learn about Robert Tellis a little bit more?
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting. I sometimes talk about how when I do interviews especially with criminals, sometimes with family members, oftentimes. So when I do interviews with felons in a jail or a prison, a lot of times they'll say things they don't want to say. They'll make statements that they think aren't revealing, but they are. And the same thing is true of family members. So in forensic psychology, those are called collateral interviews. I don't love that term because it sounds like collateral damage. I guess there is some collateral damage in the sense that everyone's affected by a criminal's actions. But this is an example of how I think people say and do things that they don't necessarily intend, that can have negative repercussions. And so, like, when you think about what his first wife and his ex-wife and his mother all said, so those are the three people that spoke on his behalf, they're obviously trying to put him in the best possible light. They're trying to plead with this jury to give him life with parole. And in order to do that, they have to make a compelling case about why he's a great person and how he should be, released after a certain finite period of time when he's still alive, presumably. But you have these moments where these people are saying things that don't really work in his favor. For example, this talk about how ambitious he is. I can understand how in a normal context that would be something that people might see as a positive quality. And sure, it can be a positive quality, but it also happens to be a quality that led to the murder. So people are just trying to describe him, but they don't understand it in some ways that they're undermining their case. That if I often talk about Macbeth. People know me. They're like, yeah, I know you talk about Macbeth a lot.
Yes,
and
you do.
the whole one of the most obvious reasons that Macbeth kills the king is because he's ambitious. So ambition is like the heart and soul of the motivation of so many murderers. And to get up on the stand and say, hey, don't let this guy go early because he's such a lovable guy. And then you say he's so ambitious and he's such a hard worker. I mean, normally, yeah, those can be really positive qualities for a normal person, but not for someone who's willing to resort to murder to realize his ambition. And his ambition was to be this politician, as the prosecutor pointed out, to be a politician whose career was ruined or thwarted by Jeff Gehrman. So I think in that context, you have these people that clearly are advocating for him and love him. They're saying contradictory things that aren't going to help him, and maybe it's just my job. Maybe this is what I'm trained to look for. But in terms of my analysis, when you say things about Tellis, like he's ambitious, he's super hardworking, he would do anything to get ahead, essentially, that one of the things that his current wife said is that he was a great planner, that he planned this trip design and every detail was accounted for, right? Like she's saying things that she sees as assets, but in a way they're not, in the sense that, like, okay, remember I talked about the last two shows, I talked about how I think there's these obsessive compulsive features that he has. And that goes hand in hand with this idea of planning. And also, like, when you say that someone's a great planner and you in the prosecution has laid out this case of how this was great plan, it turned out not to be great planning because he got caught, but like being a great planner when you commit a murder is not necessarily is not something you want to say when you're advocating for someone to get out of prison early, right? So you have ambition, the planning part, which to me kind of goes hand in hand with my analysis of obsessive compulsive disorder. You have these moments that these people are talking about this stuff that aren't really going to help him. I mean, I don't know if the jury's going to see that, but I don't, if I'm going to release someone, early who committed murder, I don't want to think this is a super ambitious person with a fragile ego who's a brilliant planner and hard worker who's going to get out and do it again, right? Like, it doesn't.
You know who else is action oriented and ambitious? Lori Vallow.
Right.
Just saying.
Right. His ex-wife said, quote, he has a lot of drive. Here's what she said, quote, he has a lot of drive. He can get you ready for this? He can get anything done if he chooses to. If he decides to go in that direction. Okay, great. Yeah, he got murder done.
He got it done.
Thankfully, he got murder done because he's got a lot of drive, and as his current wife said, a lot of ambition. I mean, yep, you're right. Those are exactly the reasons he committed murder. So those were things that they thought were positive, but in reality, they completely, to me at least, they completely undermine the position of What I want to hear from someone, if you're asking for early release, is I want to hear empathy, compassion. I don't want to hear connection to other people, right? I don't want to hear about how ambitious someone is, because that may or may not be a good quality when you commit a murder. And certainly, like, if you think about Macbeth, yeah, he wanted to kill the king because the king was getting in the way of his ascent to power. And that's ambition. That's like one of the oldest motives in Western literature for committing murder. And so you've got these people up there saying, hey, man, he's ambitious. Isn't that wonderful? Well, no, because it led to murder. So no, it's not wonderful. Right? So I just think you have I think that if you really listen to people, the lesson here for me is, and it's my job, is if you really listen closely to what people are saying, they'll say stuff that they don't necessarily mean to say, and they'll say stuff that also really helps you understand their perspective. And in this case, it really helps us understand Tellis a little bit better and a little more than we might have expected.
Right.
And same thing with his mother, by the way. We haven't even talked about his mother.
Let's talk about his mother.
Rosa Anaya basically she made a similar argument. She says, my son, he was the eldest child. She had him when she was 18. And I assume that our gems saw most of this, but he had two other siblings, 3 and 6 years later. When he was 13, the mother got a divorce, and quote, he became the man of the house. She went back to work. He took care of his siblings. He fed them. He put them to bed. These are near quotes. He went out and got a job picking chili for money. This is in El Paso, Texas. He was paid $2 a bucket. It was very brutally hard work. And, I'm going to make inferences here, but when a child is put in that position, the child is essentially parentified. And the child becomes like a parent. The child becomes like the other spouse. And the child is taking on responsibilities that they shouldn't take on necessarily. It's a burden for that child. It creates undue and unnecessary responsibilities and expectations. And this, again, if we want to understand Tellis, this is starting to help us form a picture. Because and again, the mother who loves him dearly is saying these things innocently without understanding what she's doing. But what she's doing essentially is throwing her son under the bus inadvertently. And the reason she's doing that is because she's saying this child had all these unfair expectations placed upon him that he couldn't meet, that no child could ever meet. He was forced into the role of an adult, essentially at 13, running the house, taking care of siblings, feeding them, right? He had all of these expectations. And I think probably because he didn't ever totally fulfill them, I mean, no 13-year-old really can. He spent the rest of his life trying to, and he probably didn't feel loved, by the way, completely, in the sense that his mother, when a parent puts a child into that spouse position, they'll never completely fulfill it. He can't be a spouse. And so whatever the expectation there is, that child is not going to meet it. And I think Tellis spent a lot of his life trying to fulfill that expectation, whatever it was, that unrealistic expectation. He wanted to be that provider. He always wanted to be that perfect provider. He wanted to feel loved as a child. He didn't want to be loved as a pseudo spouse. He wanted to be loved as a child unconditionally. And you have a childhood here where there's all these conditions. You're going to go work and pick chili for $2 a bucket, right? You're going to provide for the family. You're going to take care, but it's not allowing him to be a child. So you have very much this loss of innocence, I think, probably at a fairly early age. Also, it's easy to imagine that the divorce wasn't amicable. Obviously, the father apparently just left, and I would imagine that there were problems in that relationship. So he probably didn't have a good role model for a father, and there was probably conflict in the marriage. So on top of all of this other stuff, this desire to kind of put him in a spousal role, and the fact that he's parentified, you probably have a lot of conflict in that home, a lot of dissension, maybe, probably potentially some domestic violence, I could imagine. And you have a father that sounds like, who knows what, that he leaves early. He's not invested in his family, obviously. So there's a lot of issues even prior to age 13 when he steps into that parental role.
Would he also struggle though if his dad did simply leave? That has to affect him too.
Yeah,
If his
for
dad
sure.
walks out, or if the dad walks out on him, does he feel like he didn't live up to some expectations too, and that's why his dad left him? I mean, I'm totally
Yeah, I mean,
my
yeah,
thoughts
there's all of that. I mean, it would be. Yeah, I mean, well, at the very least, he probably feels like his father. Maybe he feels like some of the reason his father left is because of him. And he probably doesn't, he probably never felt completely loved and nurtured by his father and his mother to some degree too. One of the things his mother said that really stood out to me was, she said, quote, he was always very protective of me. Ready for this? He was always very protective of me. He came to my rescue. He came to her rescue? Like, what? He's the child. He's not supposed to come to your rescue. You're supposed to come to his rescue. You're supposed to protect him. I mean, these roles are reversed. And it's very hard for a child that essentially is entrusted with protecting siblings and a parent. It's very hard for that child to feel unconditionally loved. And I think that unconditional love is something that Tellis chased his whole life. And I think he was probably particularly sensitive to criticism and to any negative feedback. And that almost definitely played into what happened here.
Somebody is asking, do we feel that Jeff Garriman took away his ability to provide and then he snapped? So when he feels Jeff took away his ability to provide, did he snap? That's a question from Spring 20.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of elements that came together here, but certainly a major one was, yes, that he was in this role as a 13-year-old, a provider. And his mother, one of the things that happens in that situation is that when he feels like he has to provide and that's threatened, then yes, there's more likelihood that he will, under threat, that he'll act out with violence. So given his role as a 13-year-old and 14-year-old and 15, right, through most of his childhood as provider, that became a big part of his identity. And that was a role he really was invested in, and a role that he spent a lot of time, performing in that role. And so I think, yes, when he lost that election and he lost his job at the public administrator's office, I think all of that was now being threatened to some degree.
Lynn is asking why his forehead is always scrunched. Let's just put it this way. He's no Chad Daybell in court. He has some very extreme facial expressions. I do understand now, when he originally started crying, I didn't see his family coming, and so I understand that he did show emotion with his family, but any thoughts on the expressions he was showing in court?
A lot of it, a good chunk of it had to be anxiety. I think he was super anxious. I mentioned in our last show that I felt there's like this desperation with him. So when he was when he was on the stand and appealing to the jury, I felt like that he wanted them to believe, he knew what he was saying wasn't truthful, but he wanted them to believe himself so much. It was almost like he wanted to reach across to the jury booth and just kind of shake them and say, you believe me, right? Like, I'm right. And because so I think you have this for him, you have this turmoil between like controlling himself and feeling out of control. And, like there's this desperation where he just so badly wants to be believed. And yet he knows he has to restrain himself to be believed. And it's like, so I think you get all these facial expressions and the furrowed brow and like just all of it, I think is largely a result of the anxiety that comes from this desperation he feels to control the jury, knowing he can't control the jury. So it's this control, but also in a context where he has a lack of control.
Right. I know you need to go soon, so I'm going to jump. Dr. J has a great question. Many people have asked that question. Will he be a risk? Will he be repentant in 20 years? But I know we only have limited time, and I want to read this. There was a Rolling Stone article or profile on Tellus. From the Rolling Stone profile, Robert's father, Raymond, served 2 terms in the El Paso City Council. He later lost his status in the community and nearly his freedom for his role in an attempt to bribe public officials to win a contract for a $40 million county debt refinancing. After pleading guilty in 2008, Raymond received probation, but his fall from grace was sealed. So I just want to add that this is a very interesting aspect too. Not only did we know that his father had a fall from grace as a politician, now we know that his father also sort of left and abandoned Robert Tellus, and that he became the man of the house. In some ways, do you think that this added to his idea that he was going to sort of take up the torch where his dad failed? And then I just find it fascinating how like history or generations repeat itself. It's like this sort of generational repeat, generational trauma repeat right here.
Yeah, I know. I think you probably have some of that going on. You and I haven't really had a chance to dive deeply into his history and his past too much. So I'm a little hesitant to comment too much. Today was really kind of the first glimpse. Some people have reached out to us.
Yeah, people from his childhood have reached out, some friends, neighbors. We may or may not be able to talk to them. So, but yeah, so do you think, but that is an interesting aspect, and I wanted to throw that out there. We'll comment on that later. Do you think he could be repentant, or do you think he could, be a risk in 20 years, if that's his sentence, as we await his sentence right now? Your job is to assess risk factor in people, so have to end with this.
I think the prosecutor did a good job of kind of summing that up and said that he's still dangerous because he really hasn't. He's dangerous because he attacked the reputation of so many people. He was willing to sacrifice, according to, I agree with this, according to Chris Hamner, he was willing to sacrifice the reputations of so many people to save himself, essentially. But the larger point is that, at least as of now, he hasn't really learned. And he, as far as we know, unless he makes a statement, he's not remorseful. That he's clearly, he clearly has some, and again, I'm not diagnosing here, but he clearly has some narcissistic features. So just to clarify, there's a difference between features of someone having narcissism and a diagnosis of narcissism. But the point is that I think he's really too self-absorbed, and he probably, at least at this moment, he probably thinks that he didn't do this, or he's convinced himself he didn't do this, that he was wronged by all these people. And so in that sense, he doesn't have remorse. He hasn't learned. And the dangerousness is that he gets out of prison, even in 20 years, that he ruminates for 20 years about how he was wronged. And then he gets out and he has these grudges and he wants to settle some scores. And that's kind of what Chris Hamner didn't say that exactly, but he implied it. And Chris didn't say that one of probably the biggest score he would have to settle would be Chris Hamner's score, So, I mean, the prosecutor doesn't want to have to look over his shoulder every day if somebody like Tellis is released. But that's largely what would happen, at least given where he's at now. I mean, one of the defense arguments was that he can be rehabilitated, that he's a smart guy with a strong work ethic, and that's how you become rehabilitated. And that's not accurate either. You become rehabilitated when you acknowledge that you engaged in wrongdoing and that you have some empathy and remorse, and you fully take responsibility for your crimes. That's how you become rehabilitated. And none of that exists at the moment. It could exist, 5-10 years down the road, but it doesn't now. So that doesn't mean that he can't change or he won't change. He could. Being behind bars for years does induce a certain amount of reflection. So it's possible, he could even potentially enter some therapy groups in prison. I don't know. I wouldn't count on that at the moment. But the risks exist because he hasn't taken responsibility for his crimes. He doesn't seem to be particularly empathic. He was willing to throw so many people under the bus who were innocent and had nothing to do with this, that he feels wronged. He may have some grudges. He's in, the prosecutor also pointed out, or the defense pointed out, that he has no previous criminal history, which isn't quite accurate. He was arrested for domestic violence at least one time. So he has engaged in violent behavior before.
Oh, there's some other things. Go read that Rolling Stone profile. It's fascinating. It looks like he did graduate law school from UNLV, but he left not on great terms because he was accused of perhaps inappropriate contact with a female student. So it just continues.
Yeah. So, but I mean, does he have a criminal record? Apparently not. But it doesn't. It's not. Having a criminal record is going to certainly increase risk for somebody in his position, but it's not determinative. It's determinative. It's not the final element that would determine whether he's dangerous. I think in this particular case, also, as the prosecution pointed out, I think there's a basic social contract. Well, number one, there's a social contract in our communities that you don't murder people. So that's the first one. But also, freedom of the press, right, and the ability to write and speak and say what you want without the threat of being murdered is so important.
Yes.
It's so important. And obviously you and I operate under those protections. And if we didn't have those protections, you and I wouldn't be doing this, because we don't want people to show up at our door with guns and threaten to kill us, right? So that in and of itself, I think part of what the jury needs to consider here is the fact that this is an unusual, obviously the prosecution talked about this. This is an unusual circumstance in the sense that you can't just go, if somebody disagrees with you or writes something negative about you or says something negative about you on YouTube, and you can, we try to back everything up with evidence, right? Like, because someone says something that is supported by evidence that you don't like, you can't go murder them. And so I think part of part of this is not about rehabilitation or even retribution. It's about sending that message that human beings can, for the most part, I mean, unless you're harming people, can say and do things because of free speech in the community without fear of retribution or without fear of being harmed. And certainly you and I do that. We want to feel like we have the freedom to say and do what we think is accurate. We don't get everything correct all the time, but we do our best, and we want to continue to say and to express ourselves in a way that we can do so without fear of harm. And so I think that should be a part of this decision here.
Yeah. You need to run. We've decided I've created a new word today. Everyone's making fun of me in a great way, though, myrtle. But I also like it because I can post the comments now that say myrtle. So I think that rather than the classic unalive, we're just going to go for myrtle for our comments, and then I can pin them. So that's going to be a new HTC word. I did it on purpose. Myrtle, you need to run. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw the Seal of Nevada back up. So if anyone was worried and missing that, we will have it right back up. In fact, let's just, there it is. There it is. So you need to go run.
It does have a calming effect. Yeah, I've been using the wrong word then.
Yeah. Myrtle.
So
it was a slip, but it works. It meant to be. I'm going to say it was on purpose now. Myrtle.
So I need to conclude then by saying that I think you and I want to operate and express ourselves without the fear of being myrtled.
Correct.
I do want to end with, I think I do want to end here with something that the prosecutor, Chris Hamner, said.
Okay.
And that was that he basically ended by saying that he believed that, quote, ego and pride got in the way. And the community lost an outstanding journalist. And, so I can't call him a narcissist, but Chris Hamner can essentially say something similar without the same repercussions. So I think that's a great summary. If you had to boil this down to one sentence, it's pretty much what he ended with, and that is that his ego and pride got in the way, and the community lost an outstanding journalist because of it.
Yes.
So thankfully, justice was served, and
served for Myrtle.
It was served, yeah, and right, and so I hope that the jury makes a good decision here. And again, I don't know. I don't really know what that would be. I do think that the part about myrtling someone who disagrees with you is so important. So I hope they take that into consideration.
Yeah, I believe they will. Clearly, they're a very thorough jury. You need to go.
Yep, I need to run. So all right. Go. Thanks, Gems.
Okay, we'll see you, babe.
We'll see you.
Bye. All right, guys, let's get that Seal of Nevada back up. If I can find it. There she is. All right. Thank you to those who like and subscribe, by the way. It means a lot. This is the longest. This is a record live. A huge thank you to our moderators, too. We're going on nearly 8 hours now of this live, and we could not do it without our incredible moderators and multiple people helping. A huge thank you to Troublemaker Baker and to Petty and to so many moderators, to Lynn, thank you. And thank you to Law and Crime for running this incredibly lengthy live stream as well. They're doing a heck of a job in court. So I'm going to also just mute myself again. We're going to keep waiting for this sentencing and stay tuned. What a day it's been. I also want to share a couple of things. We've also posted 2 additional videos yesterday and today. I want you to know the Jen Soto interview with the Madeline Soto case. We want justice for Madeline, and we have a video that we posted just a few hours ago. So if you want to put something else on too while we're looking at the Seal of Nevada, you can watch that. We have evidence footage, evidence, photos, and interview. And then we also yesterday posted Stephen Stern's interviews and evidence there as well. I also want to remind everyone that I have a book club tonight, my first ever book club. It's a Zoom link. I have shared the Zoom link for YouTube members, Amethyst and above, as well as Patreon members. I wish we could invite everyone on, but we need to be able to have, we can't have it too busy. So we are going to be covering the woman they could not silence. I do have my interview with author Kate Moore on YouTube as well. It used to be members only, but I did just make that public right now, so you guys can look at that. And anyone that would like to join the book club, those links are available where I mentioned. So that's what's going on right now with Hidden True Crime. Let's keep waiting, and again, may justice be served. Clearly, this jury, we don't underestimate them. They're very thorough. They're dotting their I's and crossing their T's, and I have faith that they'll come back with a sentence they feel is appropriate. So I'll be here, but I'm just going to put myself on mute and X off the camera for a bit. Hey everyone, we're just waiting. They clearly came back with a penalty verdict fairly quickly. I assume that it might have taken them a long time to get the guilty verdict, but perhaps they understood more what they wanted to do when it came to penalty. We are waiting. There is no sound yet. They're not going to have any sound until all parties are in the courtroom. Someone pointed out that the ladies in red were the original pot stirrers, those that Jeff Garman stood up for. those women were who shared with Jeff Garman what was really going on in Tellis's office. And he stood up for them and listened to them. Baker is saying it took about an hour and 15 minutes to get the penalty verdict. So clearly a lot faster than the guilty verdict. Rebecca Young, thank you so much. We are so grateful you're here, and thank you for gifting memberships. Thank you to everyone who gifts memberships, and I've seen quite a few today. McSpunky and others, thank you. We love everyone to be able to be a member here. Rita Reed is, yes, also in red, gray hair in red. She cried as the verdict was read. She has shared on interviews before that she partially feels guilty for the murder. I can't imagine feeling that, but she is not. There's only one person that is guilty of the murder, and that is the man who is about to be sentenced, Robert Tellis. And what Rita did was tell the truth, as did Jeff Garman. Yes, this is live. I'm going to put myself back on mute, but I am here, and we will, when the sound is on, we will hear the sound.
Does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel, including the alternate jurors?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the defense?
Yes.
Okay, juror number 2, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, that, Your Honor.
Can you please hand the verdict form to Officer Hawks? Yes, please.
Thank you. District Court, Clark County, Nevada, the State of Nevada, Plaintiff versus Robert Tellis, Defendant, Case Number C-368935, Department Number 12. Verdict. We, the jury in the above entitled case, having found the defendant, Robert Tellis, guilty of murder of the first degree with use of a deadly weapon, victim 60 years of age or older, impose a sentence of life in the Nevada Department of Corrections with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has served. Dated at Las Vegas, Nevada, this 28th day of August 2024, signed by foreperson, juror number 2. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict as read? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
Does either side wish to have the panel poll?
No, on behalf of the state.
Mr. Draskowitz?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, at this time, the verdict will be recorded in the official record. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to discharge you from your duty as jurors. Before I do, I want to extend my gratitude and thanks for your willingness to be here. It's a long trial. You were a very good jury. You paid attention, you took notes, and clearly took the case very serious in your deliberations. You are no longer under the admonition not to discuss the case with anyone. You're free to discuss the case, but you're under no obligation to discuss the case with anyone. After you are discharged, you will go back to the jury deliberation room in which you will be given further instructions. I do always like to give the lawyers an opportunity to speak to the jury panel, because I think it's always good for them to have that opportunity. However, it's up to you whether you want to speak to anyone. You also may have noticed that there was quite a bit of media attention on this case. So members of the media may reach out to you and want to discuss the case with you. I just want to make sure you understand you're under no obligation to discuss the case with anyone. But if you do want to discuss the case, it's up to you. So this time, ladies and gentlemen, you are discharged. Again, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. All rise for the next scene, jury. Jury.
The record reflects that the hearing is taking place outside the presence of the jury panel. At this time, the matter will be referred to parole and probation, and we will set it for sentencing.
That's going to be October 16th, 8:30 a.m. for sentencing.
Thank you. Do the attorneys want that opportunity?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll let you know when you can come back. Thank you very much.
I'm just sort of watching still. I know the sound is off, but you never know what you're going to say. I wish they would show the gallery, though. I'd like to see the reaction right now of, we'll call them the ladies in red, of Reader Reed and others right now and what they're feeling. But it looks like they are not going to show that. There's his attorney. Well, this is, as far as Tellis goes, this is all he could. There's that seal. There's that seal. This is But all he could wish for, he could get parole in 20 years. When he's 67, he has a possibility of parole. That doesn't mean he'll get it, but he has a possibility of parole. It's interesting, especially after what John shared about his thoughts on risk and repentance. I'm a little shocked there. No, he's 47. To clarify, in 20 years, he'll be 67. Meaning he could technically get out of, after murdering someone, he could get out of prison at 67. It makes me wonder if the jury was, a bit divided and then they came to a consensus of guilt, but lessened his penalty. I'm surprised that that was actually such a short sentence. Just makes me wonder what was going on with the jury for 2 days, 3 days. Still processing it. Glad we could take this in together. Agree, Baker. Jury took pity. It's interesting. I think, in my opinion, that it does show that the jury was struggling, and this is where I think they compromised, honestly, and decided to be kind with the penalty verdict, because I am surprised. It was brutal. It was premeditated. Okay. Thank you to Law and Crime for Pool. We'll end this stream. Thank you, everyone. A reminder that we have a book club. Who knew that we were going to be live all day? But for those that are members of the Hidden True Crime Book Club, I am running the book club tonight. Not as prepared as I planned to be. I plan to pull up different parts of the book to read tonight, and I'll go get ready. I have an hour. It starts in an hour. The book club. For those that are wondering how to join the book club, you can join it through patreon.com/hidden true crime, or you can join it through being an amethyst, gem, or above on our YouTube memberships. I'm going to go prepare and get ready, maybe grab some dinner. And that is going on tonight. That's where you can find the Zoom link. So it is a Zoom. We'll have a conversation with all those. And the book we're going to discuss tonight is The Woman They Could Not Silence by Kate Moore. For those of you that didn't read the book, you are still welcome to join our book club and our conversation tonight and be there. And for those that want to get caught up, please go check out Kate Moore's interview with me. I posted that on facebook.com/hidden true crime, as well as x.com. But you can also find that by just searching our YouTube channel. So that'll get you caught up. So if anybody, just hasn't had enough of Hidden True Crime after 8 hours today, come join us there. And all right, I'll just have to go back. I am still processing the sentencing. I just want you guys to know that. I didn't mean to jump from that, but I just don't know if I have much to say right now. So I don't know, but thank you, Baker, for the link. I just want to say this, a big thank you to all of our moderators that are here, but I want to let you know that Troublemaker Baker here, I couldn't have done this live stream for 8 hours without her. So thank you, Baker. And thank you to everyone for being here. And I'm definitely gonna have to, I'll say it. I'm a little sad that, yeah, there you go. Kay said it for me. Thanks, Kay. I actually feel like he was pretty content himself. The jury took pity on him and they gave him some hope. It does confuse me. It does confuse me to think that you could brutally attack and myrtle someone and possibly just do 20 years. It's hard for me to process. All right. We'll see those of you that are in the book club in an hour, and I will go try to prepare. I hope that many of you come prepared because clearly I've been on this live stream all day. So, all right. We'll see you guys on Zoom in about an hour for those in the book club. Thank you, everyone. Exactly. Life is not over at 67. It better not be. In fact, let me just say this book club tonight, you just inspired me, but this book club tonight, we're discussing the book, The Woman They Could Not Silence, about Elizabeth Packard, incredible woman in history who was a victim of crime and domestic violence and coercive control and put in an insane asylum without being insane. And she got out around the age of 50. And that was the beginning of her most important, most powerful work. So life is certainly never over at 67. So that's what I think. I'm just kind of like, really? He's going to have another chance at life? Really? The jury did take pity in the end, but we shall see. All right. Thanks for everyone. It is not old. I know it is not. All right. We'll see you.